I want to make it absolutely clear, something very clear about all of this. Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple.
Joe Biden is clearly trying to now be the law enforcement candidate. Joining me now to talk balls and strikes again, no opinion, just straight facts, is Brian Bennett, the senior White House correspondent for Time Magazine. B, welcome back to the show. You know, I'm watching this happen. I'm watching this evolve over the last few days where it seemed like President Trump was gaining a lot of traction, a lot of steam on this, defending the police and law enforcement. All of a sudden, out of the woodwork, there must have been a talking point sent out saying, no, hold on, we're the law enforcement team candidate, Democrats. What happened?
Well, Biden definitely realized that he needs to be more out in front about his views on law enforcement and how they should act. I mean, certainly Biden has been a moderate on law enforcement. He authored the 1994 Crime Act. He was the chairman of the judiciary at that time. That called for higher mandatory sentences. It also had other stuff like money for community policing. And if you'll recall, the assault weapons ban was in that 1994 bill. But, you know, in the last few weeks, you know, Biden was asked about a month ago if he would support moving money from police to other things. And he said, yes, absolutely. So he clearly felt pressure to come out and be clear that he doesn't support rioting or looting. But he does want to tell the American people, as he has in statements, that he supports he has supported in the past law enforcement. Yeah. And he's tried to clarify his position, which is that he doesn't want to completely defund the police.
You know,
money to other community policing projects.
Clarifying is one thing, Brian, but I mean, look at some of the things I've already talked about on the show. Antifa.com, you press Antifa.com on the web and it forwards you to a Joe Biden donation page. Kamala Harris had a web page up looking for donations to bail out rioters and looters and protesters, I guess, but you don't go to jail for protesting, you go to jail for assault. I mean, this campaign seems to be shifting, trying to get back get some of the momentum that Trump has gained being pro-law enforcement.
Well, we'll see how much momentum actually Trump is getting in the polls on this. And Trump is really trying to paint a picture of America's cities being dangerous and crime-ridden. It seems to be, and also trying to paint a picture of violence in the streets during these protests. That seems to be aimed at reaching suburban voters. And the polling right now is unclear as to whether it's having an impact. Clearly, the campaign thinks it will have an impact, and they're running ads to that effect. A Reuters poll that's been out recently shows that crime is not top of voters' mind. The pandemic is right now. So we're going to have to see whether the strategy by Trump and the campaign to really run hard at public safety and paint Trump as a person who's going to stand for public safety will change voters' minds in his favor.
You know, and you just take a step back, and you don't really have to focus in on Trump or Biden. Let's go Democrats versus Republicans for a minute here. The people who are rioting, the people who are protesting, the people who are breaking windows in Seattle and Portland, they're clearly not Trump supporters. So this is a difficult flip for Biden to be able to say, oh, those people are bad. Yet all those people are going to support Biden, not Trump.
Well, I think it's difficult for the Democrats themselves to separate the large peaceful protests that are happening all over the country and continue to happen to try to bring attention to systemic racism and police brutality that brutalizes blacks more than other groups. So you've got these protests happening, and then at night you have these violent acts in some places like Portland and Kenosha right now that are destroying property. So the Democrats have been trying to separate those two issues, and Trump's been asked about this too. He was asked when he went to Kenosha yesterday, what do you think about systemic racism? And Trump said, I want to talk about the violence. So President Trump wants to talk about the violence. The Democrats and the activists want to draw attention to a bigger picture issue about ways that the police and other federal institutions in this country have disadvantage blacks.
Yep. You know, I love this segment. I love this segment because that's what we do. I'm talking to Brian Bennett from Time Magazine. You're not going to see that on other places. It's great to have you on, Brian, because we're just talking balls and strikes, what you see. No opinion here at all. Brian, appreciate your time. I want to bring you back a little bit later on as we get closer to the election to see how this plays out. I'm very fascinated to see if Joe Biden is able to grasp any of this pro-law enforcement, well, I shouldn't even say that, or anti-violence in the streets votes that he's so trying to do right now. Brian Bennett, appreciate your time. Thank you.